Today's topic on the podcast is about a subject near and dear to my heart, March Madness. The most talented teams don't always win because it's not about the 5 best players that are on the floor. It's about the best 5. If you're in the dance, you can advance. If you have your job, if you're in your company, if you got invited to that project, if you are on a entrepreneurial venture, if you're in the dance, you have a chance, then that means you can advance. Let me highlight these 5 things in addition to those first couple just foundational things that I wanted to remind us of to set the stage. The 5 elements of best teams. One is, welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic, to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everybody, it's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. It is March, and the sun is shining. There is a lot to be optimistic about and hopeful about for the road ahead. We've had a very challenging year, of course, but it's great to see that the sun is shining, that there's a lot ahead of us, opportunities, optimism, hope for better days. So however you're coming to the podcast today, thanks for joining in. Glad you are here. As always, I want this to be a place where you are able to take a deep breath, to be filled with some positivity. And also, I want this to be a place to send you some good vibes, a sacred space in your week for you to be able to step back, to think, to reflect, a place for you to be filled with positivity. And certainly, I want this to be a place where your mind and your heart are engaged and thinking about the next intentional actions that might be along your path. I am more convinced of this than ever, especially over the challenge of the last year, that authentic leadership and creating compelling cultures are needed more than ever in the world today. So thank you for joining in. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Glad you are here. I hope you go back and listen to the first 3 seasons. Amazing episodes and interviews with thought leaders from around the globe. If you have been with us from the day one, then welcome back. So glad you are part of the next step along this journey. As always, I'll just say thank you to anyone that takes the time to pause for a second. Obviously, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use. Anybody who shares the podcast, obviously, social media or with their friends and their network or their teams at work. Obviously, if you rate the podcast, please, 5 stars, leave a nice review. All of these ways, I hate asking for it, and it's so awkward to continue to ask for this kind of thing. But whether I like it or not, this is the way that things spread in the world today. That's the way the algorithms work, is if you share it, if you comment, if you rate it, all of those things help amplify the messages further in the world so that people can find it and access it. So thank you to everyone out there who takes a moment to amplify these messages and share them in your networks. So March Madness is that annual reminder to us. In my opinion, every single time that it begins, I get so excited, I get giddy. I'm so excited for the brackets to be revealed every single time, because to me, again, and I love basketball, and those of you that know that I played basketball, I have a great appreciation for the sport of basketball, the way that it requires teamwork and execution and all of the things that we'll talk a little bit about today on the podcast. All of that stuff, the X's and O's from basketball, the skill, the athleticism, all of that is amazing. But really, March Madness, even beyond the basketball, to me represents so much more than just basketball. In fact, it's a reminder to me every single year about hope. It's about hope. If you watch the way that the teams that get into the field of 68, the teams, even little schools, some of which you've never heard of, these teams that that earn their way into the field of 68, that get themselves even into the tournament to even have a chance, to watch them dance with excitement, with jubilee, to be a part of it, because there is hope. And every year we're reminded of that hope because upsets happen. Things happen that are out of everybody's predictions and control. Amazing things happen. And it's a reminder that just to us all, that no matter what you think is set in stone, there is hope, there is a chance, there is more to be discovered in the world. March Madness is a reminder about connection. And in fact, you'll hear me talk about this on today's podcast, but the best teams are the ones that are connected, that the players, the chemistry of the way that they are working together and building off one another's strengths, and the way they are, you can tell they are connected to a plan and a mission that's greater than them, than their individual performance. Those are the teams that typically advance more than others. It's a reminder to us all to go for it. That getting into the tournament isn't just the only thing, that once you're in the tournament, why not go for it? Leave it all out on the floor. Go for it. Take that risk and that chance. And it's amazing, and I'm inspired every single year to watch individual players and entire teams that are truly putting it all on the line and with their one shining moment, just going for it. And also, it's a reminder about the power of leadership. You watch the way that people respond in the midst of the good and the challenges that they experience throughout the tournament. It's a reminder about the power of leadership, the power of culture that helps us navigate our way through those good times and those bad times. And it's a reminder just about the power of teams, that we don't have to do this alone, that there are others on our teams that are capable of raising their level of play, of sharing the load, and of working together to accomplish something that's greater than us. So every year the drama and the lessons play out right in front of our eyes, and it's captivating. And so welcome to March Madness. And as the tournament unfolds this year, I hope you come to it with the eyes. Again, even if you are somebody who is not a basketball lover, come to it with those eyes of hope, of connection, of going for it, of the power of teams and leadership and culture. And I think what you'll see is amazing lessons and reminders that are playing out right in front of our eyes. So even if you aren't a basketball fan, hang with me, because the imagery, the lessons, the analogies are meaningful for everything that we experience outside of the sport of basketball. So I'm going to offer some general observations and foundational things that March Madness reminds us of every year. I'm not going to be breaking down the brackets or anything. In fact, I'm recording this just a couple of days before the brackets actually come out. And so if you are interested in my predictions and my thoughts, please stay tuned on my social media channels at Jason V. Barger. And on March 18th, 19th, somewhere in that range, I'll be sharing my picks once the brackets are out about who I think and the teams that I'm seeing that are playing with that kind of connection and culture and leadership and skill to execute the plan. So if you're interested in my thoughts on that stuff, then stay tuned to social media. But today I want to talk big picture and foundational reminders, again, that we learn every single year. And so a couple of things that I'll just foundational things that I'll remind us of. Every single year this plays out right in front of our eyes, that the most talented teams don't always win. The most talented teams don't always win. So if you're somebody out there that believes that, and especially in basketball, if you've just got one good player or a couple of good players, that they'll carry the team. Now, there have been examples, of course, of players that raise their level of play and it feels like they put teams on their back and carry them further than they could go. Absolutely, that plays out every single year. But more times than not, the most talented teams don't always win. I could name teams just in the last few years that going into the tournament, everybody said, here's the most talented teams, and they'd click them off. And yet those weren't the teams that by the end of the tournament were cutting down the nets. Because it's not about the 5 best players that are on the floor. It's about the best 5. Not the 5 best players, individual players, but the best group of 5 players, the best team. Those are the ones that, yes, talent, execution, all of those things that we're going to talk about today, of course, matter. But it's about the collection of the best 5, or not just the 5 best players. And so it's a reminder to us again that the best teams, the most talented teams, don't always win. The best teams do. If you're in the dance, you can advance. A reminder and a lesson to us again. If you're in the tournament, if you're in it, so again, if you're thinking beyond basketball, if you have your job, if you're in your company, if you got invited to that project, if you are on a entrepreneurial venture, if you're in the dance, you have a chance, then that means you can advance. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed to advance, but the opportunity and the possibilities are there. It's possible. And that's been proven year after year after year. These underdog teams that get into the tournament that nobody thinks they have a chance, and then all of a sudden you see that they're in the tournament, and so why not go for it? And all of a sudden they catch people by surprise. They play. They raise their level of play. They are a more connected team. And next thing you know, they have the ability to advance some all the way through the tournament in rounds further than anybody thought was possible. So if you're in the dance, you can advance. Another thing I'll remind you of is every team needs a little luck. Every team needs a little luck. If you go back and you watch the March Madness tournament and the highlights or you really study what happens year after year, even the most connected teams, the best teams, the ones that get through the gauntlet of the 6 games to win a national championship and are the ones that actually cut down the nets, even them, somewhere along the line, they need a little bit of luck. They need the ball. They need a good bounce. They need the ball to bounce in their direction. They need something to go their way, and even the best teams in a situation where all it takes is one off game and then you're out of the tournament, even the best teams can stumble. And so every team needs a little bit of luck. But there are 5 elements. So those things are foundational, but there are also 5 elements of best teams that you will observe if you watch the tournament this year or if you are religious and you watch it every single year. These things are foundational truths for every single team, and a reminder again that plays out right in front of our faces. So let me highlight these 5 things in addition to those first couple just foundational things that I wanted to remind us of to set the stage. The 5 elements of best teams. One is I have no doubt that there will be time in the near future, I'm not sure when, but where there will be power in congregating again, power in bringing your whole team together, your entire company and organization together in one space for that powerful keynote speech, that discussion that has to happen as a team, an entire organization about leadership and culture and mindset. But until then, we are in a virtual world. And so if I can add value to your team, your company, or organization through a virtual keynote speech, or just helping your team and organization have the conversation that's the currency for change that you need to be having internally, I hope you'll track us down and let us know how we can be helpful at jasonvbarger.com. 5 elements of best teams. One is they believe it is possible. They believe. From the very beginning, it starts in the mind, the mindset of the individual players and of the teams that it is possible. Everything starts with belief in the vision, in the dream, in each other, that they look around the room and they say to each other, it is possible, and we believe that we can advance. This may seem simple to you, but anybody who's been in any kind of any kind of athletic team, and then certainly any team at work or throughout their career, then you will know, and I can share examples of this, where I was a part of teams where we may have said we believed, but when you really got down to the behind closed doors, and if we really were honest with each other, looking each other in the mirror, that I'm not so sure throughout every single person on the team that there was a collective belief that it was possible. And there, I share stories. I'm not going to go into them right now, but I've shared other stories in my books and on other podcasts and things of teams that I've been on where where the spirit of belief has been so strong that it's carried us further than we could have ever gone. And then there are other teams that I've been on where I'm not so sure we even understood or took the time to believe that, wow, more was possible for us than we even realized. And so it starts in the mind. Do you even believe that it is possible? And the best teams, as we'll watch this March, believe that it is possible. Another element of the best teams is they are connected. They are connected. And when you watch a basketball team or you watch any group of people, any team that collaborates to come together for a mission greater than themselves, if you just watch the way that they even non-verbally work with each other, you can tell, and especially on a basketball court, you can tell whether they are connected or not. Are they a bunch of individuals just trying to do their individual thing, or are they connected to each other and connected to this mission, a vision for how they're going to play, the values of the style of play, that they understand their roles, their style of play, they understand the strategy and the pace of play that they're trying to play at. As you just watch the teams, an element of the best teams is that they are connected. Another element of the best teams, number 3, is adversity arrives. No doubt about it. On every single team and in every single experience, and certainly every single March Madness, adversity arrives. You can't get around it. There aren't any many examples of this where a team goes into the tournament and has no adversity throughout the entire tournament. There are very, very few examples of that. At some point along the way, adversity is going to arrive. And so, as it undoubtedly does for all of us, again, in our lives, in your work, in your career, adversity shows up. And the teams that are the most connected and have a culture and leadership that is compelling are the ones that when that adversity arrives, because it will, it's not if it does, it will arrive. So when it does, they are the ones that are pulling towards each other rather than away from each other. They're pulling towards each other rather than away from there. They're not the ones that are blaming, pointing fingers. The teams, if you watch the most successful teams, they don't spend any fuel, any extra energy on blame, pointing the finger, making excuses, all of that. They're on to the next opportunity. And they're the ones that, they don't spend any energy blaming or pointing fingers, but they take personal responsibility and ownership over what is the next opportunity, the next play, the next thing that's in front of them. And instead of pulling away from each other, they pull towards each other when adversity arrives. The fourth element of the best teams that will play out right in front of our face at March Madness is that execution matters. Execution matters. And it matters in all of our lives, too. Execution matters. If you watch, again, the tournament play out, that the best teams are prepared, and they have a plan, and they're able to make adjustments along the way, no doubt about it. The plan isn't rigid. The plan is shifting, and they have to readjust their plans. But there's clarity on what is the plan, and then they're agile and adaptable and able to then say, okay, the plan we've put out into place, let's execute it, even down to the smallest of details and nuances, that everyone has their role, everybody understands the play, and everybody is able to execute the play to the best of their ability. And so execution of the plan matters, and it does for all of us in our personal lives, in every single relationship that we have, and certainly across every team that comes together to collaborate on any project or any work in the world. execution matters. I use the example of this is that execution matters in my relationships. My wife Amy and I, it matters whether we execute the plans that we talk about. Not just to think, I ought to do something nice for her, or I've got a good idea in my head that will make her feel good, or a way that we're going to sit down and actually have a conversation and connect about something, a courageous conversation maybe we need to have with each other about something that's happening in our lives, or is connected to the vision for the life we're trying to create together. I can think about all those things, but if I don't ever execute the plan, if we don't ever go on a date, we don't ever sit down and have those conversations, if I don't do the things that I've said I'm going to do and she doesn't do the things that she said she's going to do, then all of a sudden we aren't executing the commitment and the agreement and the plan, the strategy that we've talked about in order to have the healthy relationship. So again, execution matters in our relationships, in executing of the plan, certainly in our teams, and on whatever that game plan is for you at your work. Execution matters. And then the last element, not the only element, these aren't the only 5 elements, but the last element that plays out right in front of our faces every year at March Madness that reminds us of this, of the 5 elements of the best teams. The last element is they lead. They lead. The best teams, this plays out right in front of our faces, is they lead. So during the pressure moments, the big ones that are obvious, there's a second left on the clock, or there's 15 minutes left in the game. The big moments or the seemingly small moments. Leaders stay focused on their task at hand and how they are committed to working together. They set the temperature for those around them. Something doesn't go their way, they don't freak out. Something doesn't go their way, they pull towards each other rather than away from each other. Somebody begins to lose their cool, they step in and they bring them back to setting a temperature. They remind each other, they hold each other accountable, they bring each other back to what that is of how they're committed to playing together. They set the temperature for those around them. They're grateful for the opportunity. I love listening to players and teams speak before and after the games, and when you can see the way they are just embracing the moment with a spirit of gratitude, of how grateful they are to even have the opportunity to play this gift and be on this stage and in this arena to even compete in this kind of way, that it truly is a gift in our world. The ones that show up with this spirit of gratitude and honor to get to be a part of it on this platform, they are the ones that set a temperature and lead others into that kind of mindset, that kind of thinking, acting, and interacting. And so the 5 elements of the best teams are: they believe it is possible, they are connected, adversity does arrive, execution matters, and they lead. In teams and organizations all across the world right now, these 5 elements of the best teams exist and are true. And every single year when March Madness tournament comes up and the brackets are revealed, it plays out right in front of our faces and reminds us that this is beyond basketball. These elements are true for every team, relationship, organization on the planet. And where we look is where we go. What we give our mind to, our eyes to, our focus to, our heart to, that's where we go. And so if what we give our eyes to is blaming, excuses, that'll never work, pulling away from each other rather than towards each other, that's what the culture that we'll end up creating. But if where we look is pulling together, of coming back to the plan, returning back to mission, vision, values, to making sure that we're on the same page as the roles we're playing, the strategy, the pace of play, and then we're committed to the execution of the plan, those are the teams that will rise to the occasion. So as always, I want to leave you with some questions for this week for you to ponder in your own life and your own work. What do you and your team, however you're thinking about team in your life or your work right now, what do you and your team believe is possible? What is it that you actually believe is possible for you all to achieve together? What are you doing to build connection and get clear on your mission, your vision, your values, and the strategy that you're going to put forth together. When adversity arrives, are you clear on the temperature that you hope to set and how you want to execute as leaders? Have you had that conversation even before adversity arrives? And that you're clear as leaders and as a team that hey, when this happens, this is how we hope to respond and how we want to execute as leaders. Remember, the best teams remember these things, but they also practice these things. That this March Madness is just a culmination of preparing ourselves all year long as a team to show up and then be able to compete. They embrace the madness together. So this year, as you watch the tournament, I hope that you will see it with new eyes. I hope you'll remember these elements of the best teams, and that'll be a reminder for the teams and the relationships and the people in your life and work. And again, I hope you'll stay tuned on social media at Jason V. Barger if you want my picks or my predictions for this year's tournament once the brackets are out and on March 18th or 19th as we get closer to the start of the tournament. Then you will hear me share my thoughts about those teams out there that are peaking at the right time. The best teams that believe it's possible, that are connected, that are ready for adversity, that are ready to execute, and they're ready to lead. Embrace the madness. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.